Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Embodied Ally Workshop. All of you have access to the chat, and so I would love if you would just jot down your name or maybe where you're calling from. I know there's people calling from all over, so if you could just jot down where you are, I think that's always fascinating to know where everyone's coming from. And as you're doing that, I'm going to throw in just a little poll in the chat there. And I would love you to answer the question. So the question is going to be, how would you define your level of being an ally? Would you consider yourself at the beginner stage, or you've done some work and you've done some learning and some different workshops and you're doing some active work in the world? Or would you consider yourself an expert, even someone who's maybe teaching, or you're doing a lot in the world right now, and so you kind of consider yourself more that advanced level? So I would love just to get kind of a clue in on where everyone is at. Yeah, awesome. It looks like mostly everyone is kind of at the beginner level. There's definitely some people who consider themselves advanced, some just starting out. Beautiful. Awesome. I know I only have an hour with you all, and this is a jam-packed workshop. And so, I usually like to go a lot slower and have a lot more pauses, but I wanted to keep this short, so only an hour. But I do have a lot of points that I wanted to bring into the session, so you walk away with some new perspectives and some tangible things to do and some amazing questions that you can journal on. I will be asking these questions throughout our time together today. And again, I know they're moving fast, and so I don't anticipate that you would have all the time that you would love to typically to actually really get into these answers. And so I would encourage you to jot down the questions and answer as much as you can during our time together, but then come back later when you have time, maybe tonight or tomorrow, to have a little bit more space to reflect. And I will be sending this video to everybody. So for those of you who are on the call, and also to the people that couldn't make it tonight, you'll get the replay, so you can definitely watch it and rewatch it, and so you can dive in as deep as you would like to that way. Just to let you know, I will be pulling out a video as I go through the presentation, but I really want you to ask questions. So the chat will be open throughout the whole time. And so I would encourage you to throw out questions as they do come, because on the end of the presentation, I will come back and look through the chat and answer any questions that did come up. And if I did miss your question, you can just retype it in at the end. And I will try to keep this really true to time and be done within an hour. And I might stay a little bit longer because I definitely want to have space for Q&A at the end. But if you have to jump off in an hour, if you have questions later, you can email me whenever. Like, any questions are totally fine. So if you have to leave right away, I want you to know that I will definitely hold space for you via email to go through these questions. I'm going to jump off of the video, but as I do so, I would love for you all to just kind of reflect on the chat in terms of what is allyship to you. So you can all just kind of jot down either what ally feels to you, what you think an ally, a person who considers themselves an ally, what they're doing in the world, how are they being in the world, anything that really identifies what that word is for you. I know we can obviously Google and see what the definition is, but I want to know what your definition is, what comes from your heart. So drop that in the chat, please. And I'm just going to jump out and pull up the presentation. And as I do so, please go ahead and jot down what allyship means to you, and make sure to just share that with one another. Okay, so first we're going to start off on here, which is how to become an embodied ally and what exactly an embodied ally means. And so basically an embodied ally is, to me, it really kind of signifies that the world doesn't need any more unembodied leaders. We can all name quite a few leaders that we know of that we would say are probably unembodied. And even as much as we all have really good hearts and kind hearts, we definitely want to be in a space where we're not doing that same thing and being unembodied. We're wanting to come from a place where we're really showing up fully as an embodied leader. And so jot down in the chat exactly what that means to you. There's a lot of people talking about embodiment right now. And so there's lots of different ways to look at that. So I'm curious what you feel that means to be an embodied ally. Awesome. And then before we begin, I want to just take us into deep prayer. And so we'll just go ahead and close our eyes. I'd like to start everything with just deep prayer, just to bring us into an intentional space. I know it's late in the evening for most of us, at least for those of us who are coming from the US. And so, we might have had full days at work, full days working with our kids, doing things at home. And so I think it's important before we come into this intentional space to really just ground ourselves and to root ourselves. And so if it feels comfortable for you, if you're in a place where you can, I invite you to close your eyes and to just have a few different moments and a few different ideas and experiences, like allow them to come through you in terms of anything that has happened today, any type of emotions that you just weren't able to actually sit and deal with. Just allow them to be in your body. You don't have to process them. You don't have to do anything with them, but just know that in this moment, you're holding space for all that showed up today and for all that you are. And that you're just kind of creating this space in this container that all of you is fully accepted right now. And just breathe in your nose and exhale out your mouth, signifying that you are allowing yourself to experience more of you even deeper. And in this space, I ask you to get curious of what it feels like to be uniquely you. Tune in to any body sensations. Do you notice any feelings in your body? Any tightness? Maybe there's some areas of expansion. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of throbbing pain. Just noticing what's showing up in your body. And see if you can pinpoint one area in your body right now. Maybe it's an area that you're curious about. Maybe because it's showing you some pain. Or maybe you're just curious about that part of your body because you haven't been giving it much attention lately. See if you can tune into that space, bringing intentional breath to that area in your body. Maybe it even feels comforting to lay a hand on that area in your body, just letting it know that you are with it, that you haven't abandoned it. Maybe if that area is giving you pain, you're bringing breath to give it more space, more healing. Energetically sending it love and compassion. Maybe even ask that part of your body why it's feeling that way. Get curious with it. And it doesn't matter if that part of your body is feeling amazing and expansive or if it's feeling tight and contracted. Relate to that part of your body as if it's your friend that you're just really curious about. It'll give you a little bit of space and see if you can hear anything from that part of your body. Is it letting you know what it needs? Does it have any messages for you? It'll give you a little bit of space to see what you can hear. And remember not to judge whatever is coming up, even if you're not hearing anything. If you don't hear anything, what are you feeling? Are you feeling anxiousness? Feeling kind of uncomfortable just sitting here? Are you feeling peace? And whenever you feel ready, you can slowly open up your eyes, allowing yourself to come back to this moment. And knowing that you always have access to your body, right? You have access to communicating with your body at any time. And we'll go deeper into what this means and what this looks like as we continue on. But I think, just having that communication with your body is very essential. And I'll go ahead into why that is as we continue. And so for me, this workshop is really about, not needing any more leaders that are unembodied in our world right now. And us choosing to show up to be a part of the shift of removing racism out of our experience on this earth and this time and place, that it's requiring us to step forward in a way that's not really shown to us, maybe by a lot of other leaders out there. It's requiring something that's unordinary. And that's my belief. And I am just very thankful for you all showing up here today. To me, that just signifies that you're definitely have some part of your soul that's definitely wanting to come forward in the space of leadership in this way. And again, leadership doesn't have to mean that you have your own platform, but it just means that you are choosing to be a change maker in this world, even if that just means how you choose to show up every single day in your own personal life. And I believe that the visions that we have are way bigger than any one of us. And so it's bigger than me. It's bigger than, you all individually. That's why we all need to come together. And so there's something powerful whenever a group of people come together, even when people are coming together to do wrong, right? There's an energy that it brings. And so I am just always so grateful when I have just more than even myself that show up, especially when I bring together women, beautiful women with beautiful hearts and beautiful visions and intentions for the world, when we all can come together. Even though I'm not seeing your gorgeous faces, I can feel your energy, and I'm thankful for you being here. It's just giving me another reflection of how many people out there in the world, right, that have the same beliefs and hearts as we all do. And just giving you a little bit of just access to who I am and just a little bit more about my past. This is me right here, and I think it's like a green or blue shirt. I'm next to my sister. I'm from a family of 7. I'm the youngest. My sister and I, we grew up together in the same home. My other 5 siblings were much older than me. And so that was us living in South Minneapolis, and I still live in Minneapolis right now. And at that young age, I think I probably was like 4 or 5. And I definitely was at an age where I just was really curious and very observant. Like I just saw everything. I feel like at that age, I definitely had very clear vision. And what I mean by that is I could see what was going on beneath the surface. And so basically what I saw was honestly a lot of dysfunction. And I really just felt like, why am I here? Like I got dropped off on the, in the wrong place. Like I wasn't supposed to be here on Earth. And I was confused at how people were relating to one another. And I literally thought I was going to get picked back up and go back to my actual home. And then after a while, I realized, okay, no one's picking me up. I guess I'm supposed to be here. And I just was looking at everyone and trying to understand what they were doing, the way that they were relating to each other. And basically what I just saw was a lot of unspoken pain. I saw people playing roles and people playing different identities. But I could see beyond that they were actually in a lot of pain, and nobody was talking about the pain. It felt like everybody was almost bullying in a way. Even the people who said that they cared about you or loved you or were there to try to help you become a better person, there was this bullying attitude going around. And so really it made me feel as if everyone just had this idea of perfection that everyone was searching for and trying to obtain. And it seemed like there was just this one identity that everyone was trying to become. And if you weren't close to that identity, then you were looked at as inferior or wrong. And it might not always be super overt, but there was very subtle ways where I felt like literally everybody was buying into this. And because again, I had very clear vision, so I could see the subtle ways. And what blew my mind was that I didn't feel that most people were tuned into this. I felt most people were just oblivious to it. I felt most people just kind of shrugged their shoulders, like this is life. This is how people talk to each other. I didn't understand it, all the way from how teachers talk to you, parents, friends, just the whole thing just didn't make sense to me. Inside my heart, I felt like I knew how we were supposed to be in this world and how we were supposed to relate to one another. But since I didn't see it reflected outside of me, I began to wonder if I was the one that was quote unquote crazy. And I remember actually making a very conscious choice. And I had asked myself, are you going to choose to follow everybody else and try to learn how they are behaving? Or are you going to follow the way that you believe you are supposed to be in this world and possibly be alone? And I really didn't want to be isolated. You know, I knew that if I did that, I would probably not have any friends, no one would talk to me, and that I would get made fun of, because I was already getting made fun of. I was getting made fun of because I was very forgiving, and I was very understanding, all these qualities that people thought of as passive. And it wasn't coming from a passive place. It was coming because I actually truly could see like the hearts of these people and who they were. And I could also, even though I wasn't like psychic, it wasn't like I could tell exactly what happened to them, you know, verbatim, you know, but I could feel into the energy of what happened to them. Like if it was abuse, or if it was neglect, or if they felt abandoned, you know, if there was a lot of fear going on with them, like I could tune into that. And so because of that, to me, I couldn't be angry at somebody who I knew was acting out of connection with who their truth really is, if that makes sense. And so anyhow, I could totally go on and on with this, but that's basically who I was as a child. And I felt it was very odd that no one questioned the beliefs that we followed. Everyone had the same kind of beliefs. There was like this normalization of self-hate. It was just common for people to be mad at themselves. You know, if they lost a job or they didn't get picked for the soccer team, everybody felt sad for that person. There was a lot of shame thrown at them. And it's like, why? Why does that have to be a bad thing? I mean, if we really ask ourselves, why do we choose to feel certain emotions because certain things happens to us? And it's because there's this collective agreement that that's what we do. But then it's like, why do we do that? And I felt like no one was questioning those things. I felt like there was a mad obsession about living up to some ideal, and none of it made sense to me. And as I grew up, I went ahead and I had, you know, just realized all these things were happening. But then I realized that I wanted to create something different. And these are pictures of what I did end up creating as an adult. You know, at a very young age, I think I was like 5 years old, I realized I wanted to be a school teacher. That was the first thing I wanted to be, because one of my older sisters was going to the U of M to be a teacher. And I said, for sure, I want to be a teacher. But then I got a little bit older, I think about 9, 10 years old or so. And I started to realize that we send kids to school so they can become successful grown-ups. You know, they learn English, math, and science and all sorts of subjects to become successful adults. But then I started to question, like I don't actually see successful grown-ups when I'm out in the world. I mean, I saw lots of friendly adults and adults that had jobs and cars and big houses or nice apartments, adults that said good morning and good evening and brought me gifts for my birthday, all these great things. But when I looked at them, I didn't want to be them. Like there was something that was definitely missing when I looked in their eyes. And as a young child, I couldn't articulate what that was, but I felt that there was the true success was missing for most adults. And so I told myself that I don't want to teach English and science, but I want to teach whatever that missing piece is. And so that was my whole passion, and my dedication became looking for what is that missing piece. And now as I am an adult, I have discovered that, and that's exactly what I do. And at the top left corner there is myself speaking at Mankato State University to a group of the young women who are in this business program. So I created a program for them where I met with them often, and that was one of our first speaking engagements that I did with them. And then the top right corner is 2 amazing young high school students. They were part of my empowerment fashion program that I created at Pillsbury in Minneapolis. And I created that program for young kids who were in high school and who were creators and creatives, and they didn't have an outlet. You know, there was a lot of internships for students who want to go into business or into healthcare, but I felt that the creator students were kind of left behind, those that felt more that they wanted a creative type of a job. And so I created a program for them to find connections and to find empowerment in their voice and in their creativity. And so that was really beautiful. The lower left-hand corner, I had a program where I mentored high school students that had internships. And so that was one of my students. And then lower right corner is myself speaking at Westin Hotel in LA. And so this is just a little snapshot of some of the work that I've done. You can definitely check out my website under the speaking tab if you're curious about more detail, but that's just a little taste. And for you all, I want to know, like, what does it mean to be an ally? And so I know you guys probably had jotted some things down. And so when I come back into the group, I will check those out. And I think it's important to ask that question. continuously. And not to ask it by going to Google and seeing what everybody else is saying about it, but to really ask yourself and tune in. And I think it's important to actually create even space to get into a meditative space and ask yourself that question. I feel we do a lot of asking questions to our mind, and our mind has lots of access to things that we've read and things that we've heard. And so I believe that, and you'll kind of hear me reiterate a lot of these beliefs and perspectives over and over again over this time together, but it's just to really strengthen this idea. And so I believe that not to say that we don't need to give our mind and our intellect any space. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying, but I think it's important to actually tune into other parts of us while we answer this question. What does being an ally actually mean to your heart? What does it mean to your soul? Why are you currently even here on this call right now? What part of you is feeling ignited? Those are questions that I think is a powerful journal exercise to ask yourself. And to even ask yourself, why do you want to be an ally? And to see if you can, close your eyes and actually touch your heart and see if your heart can speak to you. Why do I want to be an ally? And then write from that space. Maybe even place your hand on your womb and ask the question again, why do I want to be an ally? And write from that space. Maybe place your hand on your throat and ask from that place, why do I want to be an ally? And I would just be curious of what would come up, asking those 3 different areas of your body, this question. I'm imagining you'd come up with 3 different responses. And I feel like that's where the juice comes, when we get out of the mind, and we really tap into us. Because again, our mind just kind of a lot of times regurgitates like things that we've heard and picked up over the years. And it's not really us. It's just pieces of everything that we've heard. And so I think it's important to actually come back to us because we have lots of medicine within us. So I know you've all answered the question of what is an embodied ally. And for me, this is what I believe. I mean, there's lots, I can totally probably write a book about it, but just for the little bit of our time together for an hour, these are the 4 things I think is important for an embodied ally to have. And one of them is knowing the energy of racism. And so if we are wanting to uproot racism, I think it's important to know what we are wanting to uproot, And so in getting into the energy of it. And again, like when I was a child, when I described me being 4 and 5 and having that clear vision, we all have access to clear vision. It wasn't just me at 4 years old. I have access to it now. And every single one of you have access to that clear vision as well. And so what I mean when I say clear vision, it's seeing beyond what's on the surface. So that's where we get into the energy. So not just seeing the racism for what we see happening, but seeing what's going on beyond that, right? And so that's, again, where we have to get out of the mind. The mind won't be able to compute that. And so it's important to know the energy of racism. And it's important to have clear vision, which I already said. And then it's also it's also important to consciously choose to unhook from the old system. And so what I mean by the old system is the energy of racism. We can call it the energy of, white supremacy culture, whatever you want to title it, but just choosing to actually intentionally unhook from that. And the reason I have that up here is because we can be doing the actions, but I feel there's such power in having actual intention, like actually saying to yourself repeatedly, like, I am choosing to unhook from this, like all of me, and making that a part of your daily routine. And then lastly, I think it's important for embodied allies to have deep community. And the reason I think it's important to have deep community is because I feel for anyone that is stepping out and doing deep, powerful work and like changing old systems and old beliefs that are, currently running rampant in our world, that you need community, you need aligned community that can witness you. You need aligned community that can reflect the same beliefs that you have. Otherwise, it's so easy to feel alone. It's so easy to feel discouraged. It's so easy to go back even into your old ways. And so it's important to have that community to keep you reminded of why you're doing what you're doing. And I love this quote right here that says, your amicable words mean nothing if your body seems to be saying something different. And so I say this often to many people, that people can feel what's going on. Even if you don't understand energy, we can all feel it. When we meet someone, when we walk into a room, we can notice like, oh, what's that vibe? What's that feeling I get? What's that feeling when I listen to this person or when I'm face to face with this individual? We all can feel energy. And so you could be doing all of the good things in the world, but if your energy isn't aligned, it can be felt and it can be harmful to the very people that you are aiming to help and to support, if we're not conscious of our energy. And the reason I think that our energy can get in the way is mainly because we have allegiances to many different things. And so we can have allegiances to all sorts of old patterns. And the way to really tune in on what your allegiance is to actually ask yourself and to monitor your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs, and your feelings. And so, what are some of the thoughts and actions and beliefs and feelings that you typically have? If you have a journal and a pen handy, and again, I know I'm not giving you guys a lot of time to reflect and to write, but if you have it handy right now, see if you can jot down some actions that you routinely have, like every day. And that could be brushing your teeth, that could be exercising, it could be, and even could be like sleeping in late, like always pressing the snooze button. Maybe it's forgetting your workouts, whatever those actions, beliefs are, write a couple of them down. And so that's how you will see what your allegiances are. And what I mean by that is sometimes, and we all know people, whether they might be us or a good friend of ours, but we all know someone who has good intentions, right? And so they might say, oh, self-care is so important to me. Oh, I know it's really important to, create that time and space to tune into your body and to be with yourself and create joy for yourself. But then they could be the very same people that, they have to work at 9 and they wake up at 8:30. And so they're rushing in the morning, just crazily trying to get to work on time. Maybe these are the same people where after work, they're just so tired and irritated because they're at a job that they hate and they've been working there for 10, 15 years and they complain about it every day, but they haven't made any changes about it. And after work, they go to the bar, and they drink. And then the next morning, they're complaining that they had too much to drink. And it's like the same story over and over again. We all know someone that maybe has that way of being and maybe looks different in terms of what they're doing. But you can ask, what are their allegiances to? Their allegiances might be to comfort. They haven't left their job for over 15 years. They've been at the same job, unhappy. And so it's not actual comfort, but it's perceived comfort. And so that they have an allegiance to perceived comfort. And so even though someone can verbally say self-care is important, if your thoughts, actions, beliefs, and feelings don't line up to that, then your allegiances are to the opposite. And so this journal exercise here isn't at all about pointing fingers at yourself. This is not at all about judging yourself. This is actually about being honest with yourself. It's honesty. And again, like the culture that we've grown up in has been bombarding us to pretend. I remember in like elementary school, everyone was pretending to be happy. And then I grow up and, you talk to friends and it's like, oh my God, we were all so miserable, but nobody was talking about it. And so there can be this like idea that it's to pretend, it's to act like everything's okay. And so there's a lot of not complete alignment. And even though we think that we're honest, it's like there's some dishonesty that's coming up somewhere. And so looking at our allegiances is full honesty. It's saying, yes, I have an allegiance to sleeping in late. I have an allegiance to being lazy, and it's owning it instead of saying that you don't when you actually do. And so I'm going to get into later why that's so important, but it's very important. I feel a part of allyship is to be very clear on why we're doing what we're doing and to be honest about it as we're on our journey to evolving and to becoming, more of who we were created to be. And right here, it says, how can we get another's world when we don't even get our own? I know a lot of part of allyship is really also about connecting to other people, to people of color, and to learning about them and to creating relationships with them. And I'm not at all saying that that's not accurate. I'm not saying that you don't do that, but I'm saying and. So I'm putting a big and in the middle. So I'm saying, yes, go out and create the relationships and learn and enrich yourself. And at the same time, also learn to actually get your world, you know? Because it's impossible, like literally, I believe impossible to go to the depths of anything with another person if we yet could have experienced that ourselves. If we haven't had deep connection with ourselves, how can we have deep connection with another? Like we don't even have access to that. We don't even really know what that looks like true deep connection. And so really create space and time for you to really know you. And I'll go into deeper what that actually means. And the reason why, again, it goes back to that one quote about people can feel energy. And so if there's a lot of unwitnessed parts of you and you're carrying that in you and you're going out into the world doing all these actions, those unwitnessed parts of you are going to be felt by other people. And if those other people haven't done a lot of energy work, they might not understand what they're feeling. They just know that they're feeling like something's off and they don't feel good around you and they don't believe you and they don't trust you. And so that's where that kind of stuff comes up. And the reason that it's so hard for us to do that is because this web, right? This web of like the energy of racism, again, you know, whatever you want to call it, the web of white supremacy culture, this web is intense. This web is in every aspect of our lives. This web has been wrapped around us since we were children. Like we are deep in the web, you know, and I know a lot of people kind of talk about it as like, you know, we are in the water, we're drinking the water, we're swimming in the water. It's just everywhere. And so it affects all of us. It's not just affecting white people, it's affecting every single person. And so we've all been affected by it. And the way that it's affected us, there's so many ways. And so I would love for you all to jot down in the chat ways that you see this culture affecting you or ways that you see this culture, you know, kind of swimming around in your world. I only named a few here. And so please jot down in the chat some ways that you notice that aren't on this list right here. But I have this culture is in our schools, it's in our corporations, it is in our media, our politics, it's in our clothing, you know, how our clothing is made, where it's made, you know, fast fashion, for instance, life choices, in our justice system, you know, our economy, beauty standards, the medical industry, it's all over the place, right? And so it's in every aspect of our lives right now. And so looking at how racism actually, like what type of energy racism holds. Again, there's so many different types of racism or different types of energy that racism holds. And jot them down in your journal. I would love for maybe you to reflect on this later of what are some of the energies that you feel racism holds, and just write as much as you can actually, because then I'll tell you why I think this is really important. And so a few that I have on here is judgment, shame, lies, manipulation. And the reason I think it's important to look at the different energies that racism holds is because there's also pieces of that in you, possibly. So judgment. So where are you currently judging yourself? For shame, what are some of the emotions, some of your life choices, some of your beliefs that maybe you hold shame around? And back to the lies, like we talked about earlier. What parts of your life are you hiding? What parts of your life are you ashamed of? Where do you lie to yourself? You know, like you maybe tell yourself every day, I'm going to go do this, and you don't ever do it. And there's a part of you that really doesn't want to do that thing. But instead of saying, I don't want to do that thing, you keep telling yourself that you do, you know? And so where are you lying to yourself? Manipulation. Where are some desires and wants that you might have, but you have some shame around it? And so you manipulate other people to meet them instead of asking for them. Maybe you're a person that needs a lot of validation right now. And even though you might say, yeah, I know I want to be more in my power at some point in my life, but right now I do feel a little needy. I need someone to tell me that they love me. I need someone to tell me that I look great today. And maybe that's a need of yours. And so, but you don't outrightly ask for it, but you manipulate in ways to get people to say it to you. And so again, these are not here to like shame ourselves in this at all. It's just about awareness. There's a way of looking at our quote unquote shadow without feeling like we're horrible people. And that's why it's important to actually learn the art of shadow work, because there's a way to do it that's actually very beautiful and very sacred. And so, you know, I know maybe if people are new to it, it can feel kind of depressing thinking about all this. And I know I don't have time to really go into the arts of shadow work right now, but I will tell you that it can be like insanely beautiful. And again, we can only go to the depths of where we have gone ourselves. And once you can experience how deep and how beautiful being with all of you actually is, you're able to bring that to another person that reflects, the same race that you are, and to other people as well, to everybody. And another reason why it's so important to just look at the energy that racism holds is because if you look at all these different like energies right here, and if we are holding that same energy in our bodies and you're out in the world, quote unquote, wanting to do good work, and you're still carrying the energies of racism within you. I mean, just think about that, like for a second. Like something about that seems kind of off. And again, not because, you're a bad person if you do that, but just off in terms of, wow, if there's no space in actually healing and witnessing these different energy states in you, and you're just blindly carrying them inside of you and going out in the world and doing a lot of action, it's basically carrying the same roots of racism into the actions that we're saying are for good. And in my belief, that's where the ancestral healing is a powerful place to go to, because looking at your family line, especially, for those of you who are on the call who are white, and obviously if you have your family line, it has, I'm guessing for most of you, like a mix of all different types of ancestors, some that you maybe would love to sit and have tea with, and others maybe that you were ashamed to have, as we all do, looking at our family. But it's like actually healing some of the energies and some of the shadow energies that they weren't able to heal in their lifetime, that they chose to not look at. Now you have an opportunity to look at them. And so that's where I feel like the powerful healing can come, is when we take over some of the healing that didn't happen in our past generations, and we choose to say, it's not getting passed down anymore. Like it ends with me, like that type of fierce, powerful energy. And I feel like when we don't do that, what happens is we actually become emotionally numb. We have weak access to our power. We're looking more for other people for answers, and not that we should never have teachers or guides, but if we're accessing most of our to-dos from other people, or if we're just accessing most of our to-dos from our mind, which mostly is probably filled up with lots of other people's ideas that we've read and heard about or talked about with other people over the course of our lifetime, but we're not tuning into our body, that's where we're losing our power. And so going back into the energy of racism, if we're just living from that place, we're completely not accessing the power that we have. And my belief, that's where the true visions are born. Right now, I remember when I live in Minneapolis again, so I'm in the city where George Floyd was murdered. And I remember like about a week after it happened, and I was down kind of in the area where he was murdered. And I just started crying. I didn't see anything. I wasn't like in a space where, I was looking, at, any of the buildings or anything. I was just kind of down in the area. So I was just feeling the energy, and I was just crying. I was just bawling. And when I was crying, all I could hear was just like the earth crying. I could feel like the humans on the earth crying. And I heard them say, what are we going to do? What else is possible? What else is out there? Like saying like, whatever we're doing isn't enough. We need more. There's something else. And that just ran through my body. And without going into detail about that, which is honestly a really powerful story, but I'll save that for another time. But that brings me back to this point right here, is that every single one of you that are on the call, again, I don't believe in accidents. So you're on the call for a reason, for a purpose. And I believe that there's a piece of medicine inside of you that has the gift, that has a vision. And again, it doesn't have to be this mass vision for the entire world. It could be a vision for your family, for the home that you live in. It could be a new perspective that you're bringing and changing the complete trajectory of how your family connects or relates to one another, or how they relate to race. It could be anything. I don't even know. And the thing is, we don't have access to that in our normal way of being in terms of how we've been brought up. The ideas that we have right now are at such a low level, like when we're just coming from our old ways of being. The visions that actually need to be brought into this earth right now are visions that can only be tapped in when we're really accessing our power. And I feel like that's what the world is crying for right now, is for those deep rooted visions that are inside of us, way, way deep inside of us. And it's like beyond all that we are accessing every day. It's to the depths of us. And so I think that's really a powerful place to kind of go into. And the last point here is we can be so focused on our cognitive thinking rather than the vast intelligence of our spiritual or emotional body. And so just for a moment, just imagine if allies, imagine like an ally in the world. You can even close your eyes just to kind of get into the space of visualization. And again, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rushing through this. And so if you want to, I think this is a powerful visualization actually. And so if you want to come back and do this and slow down with it and actually imagine like an ally in the world, maybe even play some meditation music and take yourself there and imagine an ally, somebody in the world, a leader, somebody wanting to bring in good, do good and do good work in the world, walking around being afraid, like so afraid. And there's nothing wrong with fear again. It's just how we choose to relate to it. And we're going to get into that later about our relationship to fear. But if you're just walking one afraid and you're kind of in that anxious fear and you don't know what to do with it, you kind of don't like it being there, you're kind of trying to shove it away and keep busy, and you're walking around afraid to be wrong. You're afraid of your own fear. You're afraid of your anger, possibly. Maybe you're even afraid of your history and what might come up if you even think about it. And maybe you're trying to perfect this role of allyship. You're learning everything that you can. You're trying to be, the best that you can be. And you spent so much time learning and so much time doing and trying to get it right, but yet you're not focusing on truly transforming. And also maybe you're the type that judges yourself for the biases that you have. You judge yourself for your imperfections. And so imagine that ally walking around in the world doing good, so hold that vision. And as you hold that vision, I want you to think about the opposite end of that, about a person who's stepping in as a dynamic ally, but they're also creating this dynamic web along with them. And so they're coming in with their power, they're coming in with their sovereignty, and they're spilling it over into all areas of their life. So it comes terms of how they speak to themselves, how they devote their time, like their day is reflected and looks very different than a person who's not an embodied ally. Their relationships, their life choices, how they spend and where they spend their money, their relationship with their ancestors, beauty standards, all of that. Just imagine like that energy that an embodied ally has and them creating this web, right? And imagine if there was just a huge community, like just tap into that imagination, a huge community of women that are all coming together. And they're all coming together from this energy of we are rooting ourselves in our power. We're unhooking from old systems and old energies, from the energy of racism, all of that, we're unhooking from it. That's our intention, right? And so they come with this intense, beautiful, powerful energy and they amp it up and they create a dynamic web. And it's like just in every area of their lives, every area that they touch, right? And so just imagine that, just as intense as the dynamic web of white supremacy culture, how it's everywhere. It's like they're totally amped up, right? And they have a lot of devotion to making sure that everything from the news we watch, everything from the songs that we play is all laced with pieces and parts of that energy, literally. And so they're like not sleeping. They're like intensely working on that, on like brainwashing and trying to create this culture of fear. And yet, sometimes a lot of the nice people, the good-hearted people are relaxing and they're kind of staying quiet. They're a little bit more meek. And it's like, what if we brought that same fire, but we're coming from a place where that fire is rooted in powerful love energy, right? But not, being, not at all being, sitting down or not at all being afraid, but bringing this powerful energy where it's amplified everywhere. And so I think it's just powerful to meditate on that and to create visualizations of what would that look like? And what does that feel like in your body? And again, if you have a pen and paper, maybe jot that down to maybe create some space and time to do that later, is to meditate on the energy of embodied ally women coming together and creating that energy everywhere they go and amping up their web. And so what that would look like in terms of like everyday life for an embodied ally is they would hold their fear. So they don't hold the belief that fear is wrong. So they meet their fears. They look it straight in the eye, and they have sacred ways in doing so. And they don't unknowingly harm others with their fear because they're meeting it, and they're creating, again, sacred, beautiful, loving space for them to witness all parts of them. And they see beyond the roles that they play. And so they spend more time slowing down. They witness what has been in the dark in themselves and in their family. And they're just more curious, and they're much more aware. And they've also mastered the art of true self-love. So they're not just like staying in the dark, in the shadow. It's like they're witnessing and loving all parts of them. They're witnessing and loving the magnificent, powerful, beautiful, strong, woman that has all the medicine inside of her own beingness. They're like actually spending time to know her and to feel her and to understand her energy and to swim in it and to allow themselves to marinate in that energy. How often that's the question I'll bring to you all. How often do you marinate in that powerful energy that you hold? And so that's a thing that she does as well. She's very masterful in her self-love, and not from a place of ego, not from a place of being a narcissist. It's very grounded. And so again, this woman, that's why she brings in her witnessing her shadow, witnessing her ancestors, is really grounds her in the truth of all of it. And so not just separating different parts of her. And the reason why I do this is because we can't create a new system with the same beliefs and the same norms and habits that the old system is rooted in, right? And so I like this analogy of like thinking of a relationship, because we've all been there or know somebody that has. And so if you're in a relationship, let's say you're dating somebody, you're in a romantic relationship, and that relationship ended. And after the relationship ended, you look back at that old relationship and you're like, oh yeah, there was so many things that maybe I did that was unhealthy. I thought I wasn't lovable. And so I was really clingy and very jealous and very insecure. And maybe you also look back that you overworked and you didn't have any time for love. You were too busy making money and you didn't really care about asking the person, questions where they felt heard and loved and understood. And there's all these different things that popped up, and you're like, okay, that's where I know I could probably do better next time. But then time, goes on, and then you meet somebody else and you date this new person. But instead of actually changing your old beliefs and your old ways of being, you bring those same old habits into this new relationship. So of course, what happens? It's like it ends up becoming the same relationship. It's just with a new person, right? And so it maybe feels a little bit different, but it's basically the same relationship, just with a different person. And I believe the same is true when you're thinking about creating a new system. There isn't going to be a true new system if we're bringing along with us the same energies that the old system has, and we just paint it pink. No, that doesn't really work, because the energy is still going with us. No matter if we paint it pink and says that it's loving, if it's still underneath, it has the energy of shame and judgment and manipulation still like entangled in there, and that hasn't been healed, we're still bringing it with us. So there is no actual new system. And that is one of the big, I see as the issues with, creating true healing around this, is we, as a collective, haven't really, looked at that part yet. The discomfort that you have with harder emotions can cause you to unknowingly project them onto the very people that you are aiming to help. And this is a very tangible reason why doing the deeper work is so important, is because we carry those energies and emotions with us everywhere we go, whether we see them or not. And the only way to actually amp up this dynamic web of ours is to increase our devotion. And as I had said earlier, the dynamic web of racism has been very devoted to making sure that we all are seeing it and are living in it every single day. And so that's why it's important for us to amp up our devotion. Obviously, our devotion is going to look a lot different than the devotion and the dedication that racism and the energy of it has looked. And so that means that we have to step up our daily routines. And that means, maybe watching 3 Netflix shows a day isn't as meaningful, or maybe, over cleaning our closet isn't as meaningful as stepping up our devotion. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Those are questions that you should ask yourself. And also to ask yourself, what does devotion look like? How do I increase my devotion? What do I want it to feel like? These are all questions that I think are important to ponder on and journal on. Now, the reason why have been so stuck into this area of the energy of racism and why we have been entangled in that web is because we've been given these pills of small-mindedness, and they have been disguised as glitter and gold. They've been giving it to us as children, saying that this is what we want, this is what everybody else is taking, and and it comes in the form of success, like work hard, work harder, get this degree, get that degree, you'll be more respected, people will like you, you'll be more attractive this way. All of these pills of small-mindedness that they, cover in like this fake glitter and gold that we end up taking because everybody else is taking. And we think it's fancy, we think it looks cool, but it's just a pill of small-mindedness that we've been kind of stuck into. And so right now is the time for us to purge that, to release it, and to totally unhook from that system that has created the beliefs and the habits and the structures that have created racism and that keep it alive today. And so for me, to become embodied ally, we really need to know that we cannot create powerful change if we are still engaged in the same beliefs, the same habits, the same addictions, the same values that racism is rooted in. And I believe the 3 steps that will bring you there are going to be having a different relationship to your emotions and your ancestors, and then also building deep community, and also amping up your vision with your daily habits. And we'll go a little bit deeper into each of those. And so for a relationship, so having a different relationship, what I mean by that is having a different relationship with your heavy emotions. And so I know there's so many of you on a call, so I don't want to assume that nobody on the call is, creating space and time for their relationships. So maybe you are. And if you do, please jot in the chat some of the ways that you are choosing to hold your emotions differently. And so for those of you that aren't, or that want to amp it up and step it up more, I would say, how are you choosing to be with your daily emotions? How are you holding space for them? How are you relating to them? This one idea that I had like 10 years ago is I had a notebook that I carried around with me. It was a fear notebook. So I actually jot down every single fear that I had because I really wanted to know how I was talking and communicating with myself every day. And I know some people were like, what? Like, you're doing too much. Like, why are you doing all that? And to me, it really boggled my mind because these same very people that thought it was weird that I was jotting down every single fear every day are the same people that every single day they're reading the newspaper, like either physically or online. These are the same people that choose to keep up to date on certain reporters like all the time. So they're constantly reading what other people have to say, but yet they think it's weird that I have a notebook to actually know what I say to myself. Again, that just shows you the beliefs and the system has taught us that anything to do with connecting with yourself is strange and a waste of time. But listening to everybody else is the way to go, and that's normal. And so anything that's normal, you should probably just question of like, why do I choose to do this? And where is this actually coming from? But the powerful thing about this exercise is it really gave me a clue on how I was speaking to myself. I really wanted to love myself enough to know what I was saying to myself. And so that's a way that you can have a different relationship with your emotions. And also, I think it's important to have a different relationship with your ancestors. And that's when you're doing the healing, to heal the unhealed parts of your ancestors. That way, the generations behind you don't have to clean up what you didn't do. And they don't have to carry all of the load. And so there's a reason why you're on this call today. And I'm guessing because there's a part of you that wants to be a part of cleaning that up. And the second piece is vision. So I think an embodied ally needs to be a woman with clear vision. And she needs to be devoted to unhooking from the beliefs and habits that racism is rooted in, and really creating daily habits to connect to your vision so that you don't fall into old comforts. And so creating space for sacred devotion so that you can hear your own inner wisdom that holds medicine, right? And this medicine is laced in visions that the earth is crying for, as I had stated earlier. And like one quick idea that I have for you is you could jot down and journal, like, what is your current vision for yourself, for the world? You could think, is it a legacy that you want to create? Maybe you want to create a vision for your family. Maybe you want to shift humanity. And also journal, like, what feelings, habits, and beliefs reflect this vision. And so journal on all that when you have time and space. And then once you've came up with maybe a few paragraphs, from that few paragraphs, I want you to write like an actual vision statement for yourself. And this isn't some lame, watered down vision statement. This is a vision statement that feels very electric when you read it. Like you're speaking with conviction. There's a lot of power. You know, spend time journaling this and have it really elicit a lot of energy and emotion when you're reading it. And this could be something that you read every single morning. And this could be a way for you to connect with your vision. Many of us are reading other people's visions every day, whether they be on social media or, you know, watching TV or watching the news and seeing other people's visions and creation. This is a way for you to be connected to your own vision. Again, there's nothing wrong with connecting to other people's vision, but I feel like there is something wrong with that if we are not being routinely connected to our own as well. And the last thing here, I think that embodied allies need to do is also to create deep community. And so basically, I know we're kind of getting towards the end of time. So I'll kind of move through this one a little bit quickly. But basically, building community is really about thinking about what type of community are you feel you're lacking right now and seeing how you can create that. Either creating it yourself or aligning with a community that's already out there. And again, the reason why this is so important is because we are not actually meant to be out here alone and isolated. I think that's a part of the culture that we've lived into. Again, the culture, the energy of racism, you know, which had, you know, divided people and uprooted people from their roots. And so we are rooted within each other. And so that's another piece of that culture being spread over, especially Western culture, of being so isolated and so individualistic. And I think we need to bring back deep community. And so be intentional with that. You know, tune into your heart. What type of community are you wanting more of? And see if there's creative ways that you can create that. And I would love to explore that more with you. If you happen to have questions on that, again, definitely email me. And the reason I think all this is so important is because this is like deep in my heart in terms of the mission that I have, which is to help women unhook from the system that has tried to keep us small. That is my biggest intention. And just to kind of reiterate what we've covered so far, it's really that embodied allyship is really coming back to the actual body and connecting to your body and having a different relationship with it by actually knowing what the energy of racism holds and choosing not to hold any of that energy in your body and to have a different relationship with those energies. For one, because you don't want it clouding your system. And for two, because most of the ancestors weren't able to heal those emotions. And so we're carrying them around in our body and they're doing harm to us and they're doing harm to the very people that we are here to assist on this time in space and earth. And so I feel like our job is to witness and to heal those emotions that our ancestors weren't able to. And so that's one piece of why I feel like that's so important. And the reason I believe that's so important, again, is because I do strongly believe that when the women are well, the earth is well. And what I mean by that is when we are truly well and we're supporting each other in being well, and that is emotionally well, financially well, spiritually well, all the wellness, that's when the big visions that we can bring onto the earth to really shift the planet can really be powerful. And so that's why it's so important. And I don't think we can truly do that if we're still holding judgment and hate and shame and division inside of us. And so we can't wait for the people who are creating and spreading the energy of racism to do that. We need to do that for ourselves because the stuff that's inside of us, I believe, is also reflected collectively. And again, it's not because it's our fault. It's not like us to blame, but I believe it's because we are I honestly believe that we are the reflections of light and that we are here on this planet right now for a specific reason to bring more of that light onto the earth. And so we have this amount of power in us that they honestly don't have access to. And I know it can look like they have power, but it's basically a bunch of like wounded children running around imitating that they're powerful and that they're grown-ups. And that's not true. And we definitely don't want to be those same reflections of children running around trying to do good work in the world. We have access to a much deeper part of our power than they're able to, just because we have more clarity and more vision and more pure heart. And so I feel like we, as those individuals that feel called to bring more light onto this earth, it's to step that up. And I would love to even go deeper on that, but we're already at time. And so I'm going to move along here. And so for those of you that have to jump off, I want to honor your time, but I do want to just finish the presentation quickly here and then come in with a couple Q&A time to answer some questions that might have came up. But the reason I'm here today, and again, I won't go deep into the story, but it all kind of happened about 3 or so years ago when I was taken into the deep shadows of wounding of racism. And I didn't choose to go there. It just kind of took me there basically. And it brought me on a 3-month journey to doing some deep healing. And basically, just in a short way to explain this, is what happened was I was feeling these deep emotions and this deep wounding of what it felt like to be a Black woman in this world. And it wasn't like I was feeling from my own perspective. I was feeling the wounding of Black women that weren't even my personal experiences. It was almost as if like I was feeling hundreds of different lived experiences in my physical body at one actual time. Like what it felt like to be a Black woman for my ancestors and for women who are in other different parts of the world. And it was all coming through my body. And so it felt really, really intense. And I didn't want anything to do with it at first, and I kept pushing it away. But I heard this voice clearly that told me to be with it and asked me to hold space for it. And it was honestly like begging me. And so I started to listen. And when I listened is when it started to share with me how to hold space with it. And which is honestly how I now have all the wisdom that I do have in terms of how to actually hold space for emotion. It was because of that experience that I went to. And I know at that time it was 3 months. I wasn't working. I wasn't creating any stuff in my business. I was just honestly mainly at home healing my emotions. It was really, really intense. And in the world that we live in, it could have been looked at by many people as like, oh, wow, you're being very unsuccessful, you know, all this stuff and all this judgment about that. But I feel like that's the problem. Honestly feel like I was really being in a very successful place, if you want to term success. And the reason is because I was doing the deep work. And we could read about ancestral healing all day, and there's nothing wrong with reading about it, but it's another thing to actually go through the experience and walk through the fire. And that's where embodiment exercises are so important. It's like reading and reading and reading can have its value, but at some point you kind of need to put yourself into it and you need to experience it, right? And so I was able to go through that experience, and there is a purpose and a reason for it all. And that's where the vision of a lot of the work that I'm currently doing has came from. I would never in a million years have imagined that I would have been talking about race ever. Anybody that actually knows me from like a long time ago knows that they would never had imagined that Gigi would be doing this right now. And so that's what happens. It's when we access those deeper parts of us, these visions come through us that don't logically make sense, you know, because they aren't mentally created, you know? And so they're in each and every single one of you. And so my vision is to have you all access that within you right now. And so if you're wondering how to do that, you know, I definitely gave you all tools and steps on how to do that. And for those of you that are wanting to step in with more community, I do want to invite you into a program that I have that starts on October 25th, 2020, which is next Sunday. There's 3 different tiers. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to actually just put the link in the chat. And so you could click on that. And I also will email that to you if you're interested in exploring more about that on the website. But basically what's included is you're going to learn how to make your allyship a devotional practice. You're going to have an intentional community via a private Facebook group. I am in connection with some other women of color, and we're creating a membership site starting the first of the year in February. And so for any of the people that were in session 1, I just finished a session of Embodied Ally. And for any people who are going to be joining session 2, you'll be a part of that membership as a founding member, meaning that you'll help create the space. You'll come in at a very low cost. You'll basically be a part of the community on the ground level. You'll be able to learn from anti-racist experts. And so this isn't just going to be just working on the spiritual part of it, but it's weaving it together. I think it's important to do the actual things out into the world. You know, there's people who have that activism energy in their body, and I think it's important to do actual things too. And so we're going to be bringing that together. It's not a one or the other, it's a both, right? And so it's bringing all the bodies together and when it comes to anti-racism work. And so this is the special that I'm doing tonight, which ends at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you are interested in signing up, this is what you do receive. You'll get 2 bonus videos from session 1 that'll be included. And there's 3 different tiers, and those are the price structures. The prices for each of them are going up tomorrow at midnight. But if you're interested in getting in at this lower cost, you'll get everything that you'll receive in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, plus 2 extra videos from session 1. So I'm going to come back into the chat, and I just want to thank you all for listening, and hope you were jotting down some notes. I'll go ahead and share this presentation with you all so you can listen at a slower pace if you'd like. And so I'm going to jot down or bring in, this is the website. So if you're interested in clicking there, you can definitely do that. I'm going to go and answer some of these questions for those of you that are still on. Looks like 7 people are still on right now. Thank you so much for sharing what allyship means to you. I think it's so fascinating to hear, and I think it's so important to ask ourselves these questions so we can know how we define this. Is there any questions I missed? I know there's a lot of chat, and so I don't know if I'm missing any pertinent questions. Yeah, thank you. I think Allison was sharing shadow work carries so much power. So true. Okay, beautiful. And so if there's any questions that do come up, I want to honor your time. Please just send me an email. I'll send you an email, all of you tonight, with the playback and everything. And so you'll have that. Thank you all for being here. I'm so honored. I wish I could spend time just talking to every single one of you. And I'm just so thankful for you. I can't express that enough. And yeah, sending you all much love. Hope you have a beautiful evening. And hopefully see you all soon. Bye now.